Houthi militia continues to bombard populated areas in southern Hodeidah. World Bank says a permanent ceasefire in Yemen can boost up the economy of the country. The United Nations warns of the increased incidence of blocking humanitarian aid in Yemen. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushan Fuad. We start from Hodeidah, where the Houthi militia launched a missile attack on residential properties in Hais district. Our correspondent was there and reported that the militia targeted with the missile strike the house of one citizen in the village of Dar al-Harbi, east of Hais, adding that the house was totally damaged.
Shrapnel has spread in some homes. Thankfully, there were no children in these houses, as they have hidden themselves amid the heavy rains. Otherwise, we would have witnessed massive injuries. This area is usually exposed to Houthi shelling. However, the village is far from the Houthi attacks and it is targeted by missiles. These missiles are huge and horrifying, which leads to panic among citizens.
The special envoy to Yemen, Hans Gromberg, reaffirmed that the humanitarian and economic situation in Yemen remains dire. In an interview with the Chinese channel, Gromberg said that there have been some positive developments on the political and the military sides. He added that the United Nations is seeking an agreement for a permanent truce, but that requires compromises to be made from the warring parties. The World Bank said that the permanent ceasefire in Yemen can contribute significantly to the economy of the country. This came within a recent released report by the bank entitled "The Future Glimmers of Hopes in Dark Times." This report has more details.
Despite its prior estimate of Yemen's need for billions of dollars for economic recovery, the World Bank expects that a sustainable peace occurred in Yemen would generate considerable economic earnings and growth. According to the World Bank's report, "The Future Glimmers of Hope in Dark Times," if Yemen achieves a lasting peace agreement, there could be a significant peace dividend for the population, a 6 percentage point increase in GDP growth trajectory, resulting in a cumulative increase in real GDP by 1/3 over the next 5 years, compared to the status quo. This would be accompanied by considerable increases in public and private investment, employment, productivity, and poverty reduction. It must be supplemented by large-scale foreign donor aid to expedite restoration and recovery. Between 2011 and 2022, the conflict caused a 50% loss in real GDP. Over 1/3 of the country's houses, schools, hospitals, and water and sanitation facilities have been damaged or destroyed. Productivity fell as the violence escalated, while metrics were already low prior to the crisis. The conflict greatly hampered oil production, which is critical to the economy, weakening the government's capacity to support its citizens and impacting the civil sector. Many public workers have been paid only partially or sporadically since then. Other reasons for cautious optimism about potential recovery cited in the report include Yemen's strong entrepreneurial spirit, especially among women, the proximity of high-income adjacent markets in the Gulf states, and Yemen's economic potential for agricultural and light manufacturing production and exports. Earlier, the World Bank announced that nearly 17 million Yemenis suffer from food insecurity due to the conflict and deteriorating economic conditions. It warned that hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition were among the most pressing challenges in the country.
Prime Minister Ma'in Abdul Malik met in Riyadh the U.S. Ambassador to Yemen, Stephen Fagan. Both sides discussed bilateral relations and regional international efforts to revive the political process in the country. The Prime Minister stressed the need to find an urgent path to support the government's measures in order to achieve economic stability and to avoid the repercussions of the Houthi attacks on oil ports. The United States and France condemned the Houthi attack on a meeting of the Baha'i religious community in Sana'a. They described the meeting as a peaceful gathering, and storming it was a flagrant act of human rights violations. The U.S. ambassador affirmed that his country stands by the Yemeni people and their right to freedom of religion, expression, and belonging. The government and the Houthis have exchanged corpses of bodies of 52 fighters who were killed during the battles between the two sides. This report has more details.
As the Iran-backed militia increased its drone and ground strikes on Yemeni soldiers, 52 bodies of soldiers killed on the battlefield were swapped between the Houthis and the government of Yemen. This week's exchange occurred in the northern province of Al-Jawf, where a number of pickup vehicles drove a heap of bodies covered in white burial shrouds through the desert.
This criminal priestly group has little regard or respect for human rights or values. It holds no concern for basic human principles, as they withheld news of the soldiers' deaths and claimed they were still alive for months.
Over the last 8 years, a number of exchanges of this nature have been sponsored by tribal mediators and social leaders who have the trust of the warring sides. The most recent accusation was made after some of the dead soldiers' families said that the Houthis had executed and maimed government troops who had been seized alive.
There were torture marks, including acid burns, left on the corpses' bodies. We plan on suing the militia and avenging our brothers. They have used acid to disfigure the troops' bodies. Our fight with the militia is not over. We shall resist as long as we shall live. They know no religion and abide by no conduct.
The exchange of the dead took place despite a second round of prisoner swap talks between the Yemeni government and the Houthis, which was supposed to have started this month, being postponed as the two sides traded accusations over obstacles to visit to each other's cities.
4 people from one family died today after a car fell into a water dam southwest of Ib. Local sources said that a car carrying 6 people from one family fell into Al Jaradi Dam, which led to the immediate death of 4 people and injury of the other 2. The accident comes after a series of similar drowning accidents in many Yemeni governorates in recent days due to torrential rains and flooding which hit the major areas in the country. Government forces in Taiz targeted reinforcements for the Houthi militia, inflicting heavy losses among them. Military sources stated that the government forces, backed by the Popular Resistance, targeted reinforcements of the Houthi militia in Al-Shaqab area in the east of Al-Dabab and Maghbana in the western countryside of the city. The United Nations warned against the increased incidence of blocking aid delivery to war-affected people in Yemen. According to the UN, most of those incidents have been documented in Houthi-controlled areas. The following report has more details.
600 incidents of aid access disruption occurred during the first quarter of this year, most of which came in areas under the control of the Houthi militia. The United Nations has reaffirmed the continued imposition of restrictions on human access to citizens in Yemen. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Yemen, OCHA, confirmed in a recent report that the first quarter in 2023 recorded 621 incidents of disruption of humanitarian access, affecting about 2.9 million people in 102 districts in 18 Yemeni governorates. Despite the decrease in the number of incidents targeting the United Nations relief workers in Yemen compared to the same period last year, humanitarian access remains a major challenge. The United Nations report indicated that about 58% of the monitored incidents occurred in the areas controlled by the Houthi militia, adding that the ongoing military and hostilities in the number of Yemeni regions have caused the recording of 206 incidents of obstruction of humanitarian access. According to the report, mines, unexploded ordnance and the like are also responsible for 48 incidents of access obstruction, in addition to 18 incidents of violence against humanitarian personnel, assets and facilities. Besides, 3 humanitarian workers were subjected to arrest, in addition to 14 incidents as a result of directives and 4 incidents related to restrictions imposed on the affected persons' access to services and aid of obstructing their access to them. Aid access challenges remain extremely important to effective humanitarian action in providing life.
Coming next. The war has put the industry of traditional Yemeni Qamariya window at risk.
Beekeeping has been an age-old practice in Yemen, dating back to the 2nd millennium BC. Yemeni honey is renowned for its delicious flavor, with one of the finest varieties coming from bees that feed on the sidra tree.
عسل الستر ممتاز لأنه فيه فوائد فيه علاء كثير أكثر من العسل اللي حق المراعي ولا هاي. هذا السدر أقدر تصدره إلى البرع ومنه فائدة أكثر.
From 2022, WFP has supported 5,180 beekeepers in Yemen with training and cash to increase resilience among urban and rural households.
جزاهم الله خير أعطانا النحل الجمعية وده الحين نشتغل أكثر دخل على النحل ودي الصباح اللي عنده نلبس الثوب ونجي ونعطي حقه الماء وسكر ونشوف شيء مرض فيه مش أي حاجة نشوفها فيه إنه طول تعاليه تو من قدامنا ما يهتلك عليه كله وبعد شهر نجنيه نبيع العسل.
Yemen's beekeepers produce over 1,500 tons of honey each year, which provides income for 100,000 people. This honey is considered to be some of the best in the world and is vital to the local economy of this war-torn nation.
Welcome back. More than 166 Yemeni fishermen arrived to the country after spending months of detention in Eritrea, despite constant demands of fishermen to provide protection for them by the government. No measures have been taken so far to respond to their demands. This report has more details.
Eritrean authorities have released 166 out of 267 detained Yemeni fishermen, but have refused to hand back their vessels or their personal belongings. Local sources said that the first group of 115 released fishermen arrived in the Red Sea town of Khoukha, while a second group of 51 arrived on the same day in the coastal region south of the port city of Makha. The fishermen were detained by the Eritrean authorities 5 months ago while working in international waters. The Yemenis have demanded that the authorities free the remaining 101 fishermen currently being held, as hundreds of Yemeni fishermen have been jailed in Eritrea in recent years for allegedly violating Eritrean waters, which is a claim rejected by the Yemenis. While the dispute between Yemen and Eritrea over water rights in the Red Sea erupted into a brief conflict in 1995 over the island of Greater Honish, a ruling later determined that the territory belonged to Yemen. Separately, foreign envoys in Yemen and human rights organizations have condemned the Houthis for abducting 17 members of the Baha'i religious minority after attacking its gathering in Sana'a last week. U.S. Ambassador to Yemen Stephen Fagan said that they condemned the May 25 Houthi raid on a peaceful gathering of Baha'i in Sana'a, resulting in the forced disappearance of at least 17 people. Human Rights Watch also condemned the action, while urging the Houthis to set those held free and refrain from persecuting religious minorities. The international community should stand in solidarity with the Baha'i community and exert pressure on the Houthi authorities to release the detained people immediately. Yemeni organizations, including the Yemeni Network for Rights and Freedoms, also strongly condemn the actions of the Houthis.
The United Arab Emirates said it was no longer taking part in operations by a U.S.-led task force protecting Gulf shipping. According to a statement by the Foreign Ministry, this move of withdrawal came after a thorough assessment of this international task force. The statement added, however, UAE remains one global partner on security, counterterrorism and counter-piracy in the Red Sea and Gulf regions. The Yemeni Riyal continued its value decline in government-controlled areas. Economists and bankers said that exchange rates will continue to collapse amid the comprehensive government inability to address the situation or control resources. Economists expected that the state of collapse would continue in the coming weeks if an urgent intervention is made to restore financial stability. The Houthi militia stormed the headquarters of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the capital Sana'a. Local sources said that the militia stormed the headquarters of the Chamber of Commerce with dozens of armed elements, led by the Ministry of Commerce. The sources indicated that the Houthi raid came one day after a Houthi leader highlighted his full support for controlling the Chamber of Commerce and the activities of the private sector. The industry of traditional Yemeni Qamariya window has been in place over decades, yet the conflict has put such an industry at risk. This report gives more details.
Yemeni buildings are nearly entirely decorated with stained glass, or as it is called, Qamariya, a unique Yemeni architecture art that Yemenis have used for thousands of years. The primary purpose of the Qamariyas is to provide light into the interior, in addition to having artistic value. Despite the fact that there are many decorative forms that are varied in size and shape, it relies on a number of factors.
We mix water with gypsum and pour it on the wooden board with an arc, then leave it to dry. Then I sculpture the pattern that I choose or that the customer chooses is drawn.
Muhammad Saleh aims to recreate the Yemeni architecture tradition of Qamariyas, which had historical significance in the past. In spite of the challenges faced by craftsmen in Qamariyas industry, the most significant of which is the dramatic fall in consumer demand and the expensive cost of the raw materials used to create Qamariyas. Its production really continues in one of the streets in the city of Taiz.
There are many obstacles we face, including that most of the buildings have window moldings made of aluminium, which cause the lack use of Qamariyas. And our work is limited to restoring old Qamariyas, not to mention the high prices.
Due to the widespread use of Qamariyas in Yemen, they need to be protected from extinction, for which Yemen has long been famous for.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Houthi militia continues to bombard populated areas in southern Hodeidah. World Bank says a permanent ceasefire in Yemen can boost up the economy of the country. The United Nations warns of the increased incidents of blocking humanitarian aid in Yemen. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouad. See you soon.